The moment my fingers wrapped around the grip of my Colt, the world went quiet. Not the kind of quiet you get out on the plains at sunrise, soft, peaceful, full of promise.
No.
This was the kind of silence that presses against your chest, thick and suffocating, like the air itself is waiting to see who's going to die first. I didn't pull the revolver out all the way. Not yet. But everyone in that room saw it. They saw my hand move. They saw the intention. And just like that, the laughter died. 5 men stood across from me, boots planted in the dusty wooden floor of McAllister's saloon. Their drinks sat untouched now, forgotten on the table. The piano in the corner had stopped mid-note, old Henry's fingers frozen over the keys like he'd turned to stone. Nobody blinked. Nobody spoke, because they all knew who I was. Daniel Mercer. Most folks just called me Big Dan. And I didn't reach for my gun unless something was about to end. I could feel the boy behind me. Didn't need to turn around. Didn't need to look. I could hear his breathing. Fast, shallow, uneven. He couldn't have been more than 12. Maybe 13 if life had already been hard on him. The kind of kid who still believed in right and wrong, even when the world had long since stopped caring about either. Dan, he whispered, voice barely holding together. Please. I didn't answer him. Not because I didn't hear him, but because if I let myself think about him right now, I might hesitate. And hesitation gets people killed. The man standing in the center of the group took a slow step forward. Cole Riker. Meanest bastard within 50 miles. Maybe more. He wasn't the biggest man in the room, but he didn't need to be. His reputation did the heavy lifting for him. A jagged scar ran from his left ear down to his jaw, pulling his smile into something crooked and unnatural. I'd seen that smile before, usually right before someone hit the ground. Well now, Cole said, his voice smooth but edged with steel. Ain't this a sight? He tilted his head slightly, eyes locked on mine, like he was trying to measure something. You reaching for that iron, Dan? He continued. Or, you just trying to remind us how big your hands are? A couple of his men let out nervous chuckles. Nervous. That told me everything I needed to know. They weren't confident.
Good.
But nervous men are dangerous. They make mistakes. They pull triggers too fast. And today, one mistake would be all it takes. I slowly lifted my gaze, meeting Cole's eyes fully now. You picked the wrong kid, I said. My voice came out calm. Too calm. That was on purpose. Because inside, I could feel the storm building. Cole's smile widened, stretching that scar even further. Wrong kid, he repeated, almost amused. Boy stole from me. He was hungry, I said. That's so. Cole shrugged slightly. Then he should have starved. The words hung in the air like poison. Behind me, the boy shifted. I heard the faint scrape of his boot against the floor. And I knew if I didn't end this right, he wouldn't walk out of here. None of us might. I finally pulled the Colt free from a holster.
Slow.
Deliberate. The metal caught the dim light from the oil lamps, flashing just enough to draw every eye in the room. No one moved. Not Cole. Not his men. Not even the bartender, who had ducked halfway behind the counter but hadn't fully committed yet. Because now it was real. This wasn't a threat anymore. This was a line drawn in the dust. Cole's hand twitched near his own gun. Not a full move. Just a test. He was waiting to see if I'd flinch. I didn't. I ain't asking twice, I said. My voice dropped lower this time. Heavier. Walk away. The room held its breath again. Cole stared at me for a long moment. Long enough that I could feel the sweat starting to gather at the back of my neck. Long enough for my trigger finger to tighten just slightly, not enough to fire, but enough to remind myself what came next if this went wrong. Then he laughed. A short, sharp sound. You always did have a hero streak in you, Dan, he said. Thought maybe you grew out of it. I didn't. His eyes flickered for just a second. And that's when I saw it. Not fear. Not yet. But calculation. He was weighing it. 5 men against 1. But that one was me. And he knew exactly what that meant. You really gonna draw on me? Cole said slowly. Over some scrawny little thief? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I shifted my stance just slightly, angling my body, steadying my grip. Preparing. Yeah, I said finally. The word landed heavier than any gunshot. Silence again.
Even deeper this time.
The kind of silence that only comes right before everything breaks. One of his men, young, maybe too young to be standing there, licked his lips and glanced at Cole. "Boss," he muttered. Cole didn't look at him.
Didn't need to.
He was still staring at me. Then slowly his hand moved. Not fast. Not sudden. But enough. Time stretched. I could hear my own heartbeat now. Slow. Controlled. Every pulse measured. I knew exactly how this would go. First man drops. Second man panics. Third tries to run. Cole. Stop. The voice cut through the room like a whip. Everyone froze. Even me. It came from the doorway. I didn't turn my head. Didn't dare break eye contact with Cole. But I saw it in his expression. That flicker again. This time it wasn't calculation. It was something else. Annoyance. "Not now," Cole muttered under his breath. Boots stepped onto the wooden floor behind him. Heavy. Confident. Not afraid. That alone told me this wasn't just anyone. "You boys making a mess in my town again?" the voice said.
Calm.
Older.
But sharp.
I finally allowed myself a glance. Just enough to see him. Sheriff Wallace. Of course. Tall. Weathered. Gray creeping into his beard. His hand rested casually near his own gun, but unlike everyone else in this room, he wasn't tense. He didn't need to be,
Because he wasn't guessing.
he already knew how this would end. "Sheriff," Cole said, his tone changing just slightly. Not respectful, but cautious. "Just handling business." Wallace's eyes moved across the room. From Cole, to his men, to me, and finally to the boy behind me.
He sighed.
Slow. Tired. "Looks like business that's about to get someone buried," he said.
No one argued with that.
Because it was the truth. And we all knew it. Wallace stepped forward another pace. "Dan," he said, not taking his eyes off Cole. "You planning on finishing this?" I didn't answer. Not right away. Because for the first time since this started, I hesitated.
Just for a second.
And that second felt like a lifetime. Because I knew something the sheriff didn't. This wasn't just about the boy. This wasn't just about Cole. This was about something that started long before today. Something I had tried to bury. And if I pulled that trigger now, it wouldn't just be the beginning of a fight. It would be the end of everything I had left. I tightened my grip on the Colt. And for the first time in years, I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing. The silence returned. But this time, it wasn't waiting for a gunshot. It was waiting for my decision. And deep down, I knew, no matter what I chose, nothing would ever be the same again. The silence didn't break all at once. It cracked. Slow, like ice under pressure. Sheriff Wallace stood there, just inside the doorway, his presence cutting through the tension like a blade. But even he knew, this wasn't something a badge alone could fix. I kept my Colt raised. Not fully aimed, not yet. But ready. Cole Riker's eyes shifted slightly, just enough to acknowledge the sheriff. That was the kind of man he was, never fully turning his back on danger, never fully trusting anyone in the room. "Sheriff," Cole said, his voice steady again. "Didn't figure you'd come running for a street rat." Wallace didn't answer right away. He stepped forward, boots thudding softly against the wooden floor, each step deliberate. "I didn't," he said finally. "Came because I heard trouble." His eyes moved back to me. And I see I wasn't wrong. I could feel the weight of his gaze. He wasn't just looking at the situation, he was looking at me. Trying to read me. Trying to figure out if I was about to turn this place into a graveyard. Behind me, the boy shifted again. "Please," he whispered, this time louder. "I didn't mean to." "Quiet," I said, not harsh but firm. He went silent. Good. Because the more he talked, the worse this could get. Cole smirked. "You got yourself a protector, kid," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "That's real touching." I ignored him. But my mind wasn't as steady as my hand. Because the truth was, Cole wasn't wrong about one thing. This wasn't like me. Not anymore. Years ago? Sure. I would have drawn faster. Shot quicker. Asked fewer questions. Back then, I didn't need a reason. Now, I did. And that was the problem. Dan, Sheriff Wallace said, voice low but clear. You want to tell me what's going on? I exhaled slowly. Didn't take my eyes off Cole.
He stole food, I said.
Wallace's brow furrowed slightly. That all? That's all it takes for him, I replied, tilting my head just a fraction toward Cole. The sheriff looked back at Cole. Cole didn't flinch. Stealing, he said. Don't matter if it's gold or bread. Depends who you ask, Wallace replied. Cole's smile thinned. For a second, the tension shifted, not between me and Cole, but between him and the law. And that was dangerous. Because Cole wasn't the kind of man who respected authority. He tolerated it when it suited him. But I'd seen what happened when it didn't. Sheriff, Cole said slowly, you planning to step in? Wallace didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at me again. And I understood. He wasn't asking Cole.
He was asking me.
You gonna end this, or am I? I swallowed just slightly. My hand tightened around the Colt. And that's when it hit me. Not the fear. Not the danger. The memory. It came fast.
Sharp.
Uninvited. Another room. Another standoff. Another man standing across from me, thinking he had a chance. I had been younger then. Hotter. Angrier.
I didn't hesitate that time. Didn't think.
Didn't question. Just pulled the trigger. The sound echoed in my head now, louder than anything in the saloon. The way the man dropped. The way the room went quiet after. The way I told myself it was necessary. But it hadn't ended there. It never does. Because every time you pull that trigger, you don't just end a life. You start a chain. And sooner or later, that chain comes back around. I blinked. The memory faded. But the feeling didn't. Cole must have seen something shift in my expression, because his smile came back. Subtle. Predatory. You're thinking too much, Dan, he said. That ain't like you. He took another step forward.
Small.
Measured.
Testing me.
You used to be faster than that, he added. I'm still fast enough, I replied. Maybe, he said. But you ain't the same man anymore. That one landed. Harder than I expected. Because he wasn't wrong. And he knew it. That hesitation, Cole continued, his voice lowering just slightly, gets people killed. The irony almost made me laugh. Almost. Instead, I steadied my stance.
You're right, I said.
Cole's eyes flickered. He didn't expect that. I ain't the same man, I continued. That's why you're still standing. The room tightened again. Every man there felt it.
The shift.
Now it wasn't just a standoff. It was personal. Cole's jaw flexed slightly. That smile of his? It didn't disappear, but it changed. Less amused. More dangerous. You always did talk big, he said. And you always hid behind numbers, I shot back. That did it. One of his men stepped forward. Boss, we don't need this. Stay where you are, Cole snapped. The man froze. Smart. Because this had just become something else entirely. Sheriff Wallace stepped closer now. Not between us. But near enough that his presence couldn't be ignored. That's enough, he said firmly. This ends now. But no one moved. Because deep down, we all knew. This wasn't ending clean. Cole looked at Wallace, then back at me. Then slowly, his hand moved away from his gun. Not surrender. Not peace. Just a pause. All right, he said. Let's say I walk away. The room shifted again. Even I felt it. Because that wasn't what I expected. What happens then? Cole continued. Kid learns he can steal without consequence. I didn't lower my gun. He learns he's alive, I said. Cole chuckled softly. You think that's enough? For today, I replied. A long silence followed. Then Cole nodded once. Slow. Like he was accepting something. Or pretending to. Fine, he said. For today. But there it was. That tone. That promise underneath the words. This wasn't over. Not even close. He turned slightly, gesturing for his men to step back. They hesitated. Then obeyed. One by one, they moved away from the center of the room. But none of them turned their backs. Not completely. They knew better. Cole took one last look at me. You just bought yourself a problem, Dan, he said quietly. I already had one, I replied. He smirked again, then turned and walked out. His men followed. The door creaked as it opened, then slammed shut behind them. And just like that, the tension broke. The piano player exhaled loudly. Someone in the back muttered a prayer. The bartender stood up fully again, wiping sweat from his brow. But me? I didn't move. Not right away. Because I knew something they didn't. That wasn't a victory. That was a warning. Behind me, the boy let out a shaky breath. Thank you, he said. I finally lowered the Colt.
Slow.
Careful. Then I turned. Looked at him for the first time. Dirty face. Sunken eyes.
Hungry.
But alive. Don't thank me yet, I said. Sheriff Wallace stepped up beside me. You just made an enemy out of the worst man in this territory, he said. I already told you, I replied, holstering my gun. I've had worse. Wallace studied me for a moment, then shook his head slightly. No, he said. Not like this. I frowned. What do you mean? He looked toward the door, where Cole had disappeared. Then back at me. I mean, he said quietly, you don't know what you just stepped into. The word sat heavy in my chest, because something in his tone, something in the way he said it, told me this wasn't about a stolen meal. This wasn't about pride. And it sure as hell wasn't over. Not even close. And for the first time, since I walked into that saloon, I had a feeling the real trouble hadn't even started yet. The saloon never really went back to normal after Cole walked out. People tried. Henry picked up the piano again, but his fingers didn't have the same rhythm. The bartender poured drinks a little too fast, a little too heavy. Conversations came back in low murmurs, like everyone was afraid their voices might bring trouble crashing through the door again.
Me?
I stayed where I was for a moment longer, staring at the door Cole had walked through. I've seen men make threats before. Most of them don't mean much. But Cole Riker, he didn't waste words. If he said something was coming, it was coming. You planning to stand there all day? Sheriff Wallace asked beside me. I exhaled slowly and finally shifted my weight. Just thinking, I said. That's new, he muttered. I almost smirked. Almost. But my eyes drifted back to the boy. He hadn't moved far. Still hovering near the edge of the room like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to exist anymore. What's your name? I asked. He hesitated. Then, quietly, Eli. Eli what? He shook his head. Just, Eli. That told me enough. Kids like him don't forget their last names. They lose them, or they stop using them for a reason. I nodded once. All right, Eli, I said. You hungry? His eyes flickered with something, hope, maybe, but he tried to hide it. Yes, sir. I glanced at the bartender. Get him something warm, I said, tossing a couple coins onto the counter. The bartender didn't argue, just nodded and got to work. Eli looked at the food like it might disappear if he blinked too long. Eat, I told him. He didn't need to be told twice. As he sat down and started tearing into the meal, Sheriff Wallace crossed his arms and leaned against a nearby post. You're collecting strays now? He asked. Just passing through, I replied. He hummed. Funny way of passing through. Most men don't start wars on their way out of town. I didn't start anything. Wallace raised an eyebrow. No? Because from where I'm standing, you just told Cole Riker to walk away empty-handed in front of his own men. I didn't respond. Because again, he wasn't wrong. Wallace let the silence stretch for a moment, then sighed. You really don't remember, do you? He said. That made me look at him.
What?
His expression changed slightly. Less sharp. More cautious. I was wondering, he said. When you walked in earlier, the way Cole looked at you, I thought maybe you knew. Knew what? Wallace straightened up, glancing briefly toward the door before stepping a little closer. Cole ain't just some outlaw passing through anymore, he said quietly. He's building something. I frowned. What kind of something? The kind that doesn't stop at one town, Wallace replied. The kind that spreads. My stomach tightened just slightly. How many men? More than you saw today. Where? Wallace shook his head. Everywhere. That wasn't the answer I wanted. But it told me enough. Cole wasn't just causing trouble. He was planning something bigger. And now, I was part of it. I looked back at Eli. He had slowed down now, eating more carefully, like he was finally realizing the food wasn't going anywhere. Why him? I asked. Wallace followed my gaze. Wrong place, he said. Wrong time. That's it. That's enough, Wallace replied. Cole's been tightening his grip around here. Taxes folks who can't afford it. Takes what he wants. And anyone who pushes back. He didn't finish the sentence.
Didn't need to.
I'd seen that story play out before. Different town. Different names. Same ending. And you let him? I asked. Wallace's jaw tightened. You think I don't try? He said. I've got a badge and maybe a handful of men who'd stand with me if it came to it. Cole's got numbers. Guns. And no rules. I nodded slowly. That math rarely ends well. For anyone. He's waiting for something, Wallace added. What? Opportunity. The word hung in the air. Heavy. Because men like Cole don't build power for nothing. They wait. They watch. And when the time's right, they take everything. Eli finished his food and looked up at me, wiping his mouth with the back of his sleeve. Sir, he said quietly. Am I safe now? That question hit harder than anything Cole had said. Because the truth? I didn't know. Not anymore. I looked at Wallace, then back at the boy.
For now, I said.
It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Eli nodded like that was enough.
Kids are like that.
They take what they can get. I turned back to Wallace. What about the families? I asked. The people here? They're scared, he said simply. And scared people don't fight. That made sense. Fear spreads faster than anything. Faster than anger. Faster than courage. And once it takes hold, it's hard to shake. I ran a hand along my jaw, thinking. I hadn't planned on staying. Hadn't planned on getting involved.
But now,
things had changed. You should leave, Wallace said suddenly. I looked at him. What? Take the kid and go, he continued. Before Cole decides to make an example out of you. I studied him for a moment. You really think he'll let this go? Wallace didn't hesitate.
No.
Then leaving won't fix it. It might keep you alive. I almost laughed at that. Alive ain't always the goal, I said. Wallace shook his head. That's the kind of thinking that gets men buried. Maybe, I said, but it also gets things done. We stood there in silence for a moment. Then Eli spoke again. Sir. I looked down at him. Yeah. Where do I go? That was the real question. Not about Cole. Not about the town. About him. A boy with nothing. No place. No one. I exhaled slowly. You got any family? I asked. He shook his head. Friends. Another shake. I nodded. Figured as much. I glanced at Wallace. Then back at Eli. You ever worked a ranch? I asked. He blinked. No, sir. You willing to learn? He nodded fast. Yes, sir. I considered it for a moment, then made the decision. You're coming with me, I said. Wallace straightened. That's your plan? He asked. Ride off and pretend this doesn't follow you? I met his gaze. It's already following me. Wallace didn't argue with that. Because again, he knew I was right. I reached into my coat and pulled out a small piece of paper. An old address. One I hadn't looked at in a long time. Know this place? I asked, handing it to him. Wallace glanced at it, then back at me. You planning to go there? Yeah. He studied me for a second longer, then nodded slowly. That might actually be your only chance. That didn't sound reassuring, but it was enough. I turned to Eli. Finish up, I said. We ride soon. He nodded, determination replacing fear in his eyes. Good. He'd need that. Because whatever came next wasn't going to be easy. I looked back at the door one last time. The sun outside had started to dip, casting long shadows across the street. And somewhere out there, Cole Riker was already planning his next move. I could feel it, like a storm building on the horizon. And this time, running wasn't going to stop it. Because trouble like this doesn't stay behind. It follows you. And sooner or later, It catches up. We didn't leave town right away. That was my first mistake. The sun was already sinking when Eli finished eating, and riding out blind into open land at night with a kid who barely knew how to sit a saddle didn't feel smart. I told myself we'd rest a few hours, leave before dawn, stay ahead of whatever Cole had planned. I should have known better. Men like Cole don't wait for daylight. They come when you're tired, when you think you still have time. The sky turned a deep shade of burnt orange as I stepped out of the saloon, Eli close behind me. The street was quieter than usual. Doors shut. Windows dark. Folks had heard what happened, and they were already preparing for what came next. Fear travels fast in small towns. You got a horse? I asked Eli. He shook his head. Never rode one before. I nodded toward the stable, across the street. You're about to learn. We crossed the road in silence, boots crunching softly against the dry dirt. The air had cooled just enough to carry that sharp desert smell. Dust, leather, and something else. Tension. The stable owner, a thin man named Curtis, looked up the moment I walked in. His eyes flicked past me, scanning the street behind like he expected someone to be watching. You shouldn't be here, he said under his breath. Need 2 horses, I replied. He hesitated. Dan, I heard what happened. Then you know I'm not asking twice. Curtis swallowed. Nervous. Not defiant. Just scared. He moved quickly after that, saddling 2 horses without another word. Eli watched closely, trying to memorize every movement like it might save his life later. It might. Keep your weight centered, I told him as I adjusted the stirrups. Don't fight the horse. Let it move. He nodded, gripping the saddle like it might throw him off any second. Relax, I added. Horse can feel fear. He tried. Didn't quite succeed. But he was trying. That counted. I handed Curtis a few extra coins. For your trouble. He didn't take them right away. Dan, he said quietly. They'll come tonight. I met his eyes. I know. You should have left already. Yeah, I muttered. I should have. He took the coins then, but his hand trembled slightly. Good luck, he said. I gave a small nod and led Eli out.
The town looked different now. Still.
Waiting, like it was holding its breath. Sheriff Wallace stood near the center of the street, talking to 2 men I hadn't seen before, probably locals willing to stand their ground or too stubborn to run. He looked up as I approached. You're still here, he said. Not for long, I replied. His gaze shifted to Eli, then back to me. You sure about this? No, I said honestly. But I'm doing it anyway. Wallace gave a faint, tired smile. That sounds about right. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. They've been seen on the outskirts, he said. More than before. How many? Enough. I nodded. That was all I needed. Get your people ready, I said. Wallace raised an eyebrow. Thought you were leaving. I am, I replied. But they're not coming just for me. Understanding settled in his eyes. And with it, something heavier. Responsibility. You're thinking of staying, he said. I didn't answer. Because I hadn't decided yet. But part of me already knew. I looked at Eli. He sat stiff on the horse, trying to look braver than he felt. Can you ride? I asked. He hesitated. Maybe. Good enough, I said. If things go bad, you head west. Don't stop. What about you? I didn't respond right away. Instead, I reached into my coat and pulled out that same piece of paper I'd shown Wallace earlier. Take this, I said, handing it to him. If you make it there, tell them I sent you. Eli looked at the paper, then at me. You're not coming? Depends how the night goes. His expression tightened. Fear again, but something else too.
Trust.
Stay close until I say otherwise, I added. He nodded. That's when we heard it. Hoofbeats. Distant, but growing.
Fast.
Wallace turned immediately, hand dropping to his gun. They're here, he said. The street shifted instantly. Doors slammed shut. Lights went out. Men moved into position behind barrels, near corners, anywhere that offered even a sliver of cover. I stepped forward, moving into the open, because hiding wasn't my style. Not tonight. The sound of horses grew louder, echoing off the buildings. Then they appeared, one by one, emerging from the edge of town like shadows taking shape. More than before. Way more. Cole rode at the front, calm as ever, like this was just another evening ride. He pulled his horse to a stop about 20 yards from me. His men spread out behind him, forming a loose line. Guns visible. Ready. "This ain't your smartest move, Dan," Cole called out. His voice carried easily through the still air. "You should have ridden when you had the chance." "Still got that chance," I replied. He smirked. "Not anymore." I could feel Eli behind me, tense, waiting. Wallace and his men held their ground to my left, the town to my right, and right in front of me, trouble. The kind that doesn't walk away twice. "You made this bigger than it needed to be," Cole said. "You made it what it is," I shot back. His eyes narrowed slightly. Then he chuckled. "You always did like to talk like that," he said. "Like you're standing on some higher ground." "I'm standing," I said. "That's enough." That wiped the smile from his face. For just a second. Then it came back. Colder this time. "Here's how this goes," he said. "You hand over the boy, and maybe I let the rest of you keep breathing." Eli stiffened behind me. I didn't move.
No.
One word. Simple. Final. Cole sighed. Almost disappointed. "That's a shame," he said. His hand moved. Fast this time. And everything broke. Gunfire exploded through the night. The first shot wasn't mine.
Didn't need to be.
One of his men fired too early. That was their mistake. I drew and fired in one motion. The recoil hit my hand like an old memory. Familiar. Unwelcome. The man dropped. Chaos followed. Shots rang out from both sides. Wood splintered. Glass shattered. Horses panicked and reared. "Down," I shouted, grabbing Eli and pulling him behind a water trough. He hit the ground hard but stayed low. "Good kid." Wallace's men returned fire, holding the line as best they could. But they were outnumbered.
Badly.
I fired again. And again. Each shot precise. Controlled. No wasted movement. Because this wasn't about winning anymore. This was about surviving. A bullet slammed into the trough, sending wood chips flying across my face. Too close. Way too close. I grabbed Eli's shoulder.
"Now."
I barked. "Go west." "But..." "Go." He hesitated for half a second. Then he ran, climbing onto the horse, fumbling but managing to stay on as he kicked it into motion.
Good.
At least one of us might make it out. I turned back to the fight. Cole was still there. Still standing. Still watching. Like this was all part of his plan. Our eyes met through the smoke and dust. And I saw it clearly now. This wasn't just about control. This wasn't just about power. This was personal. He raised his gun slightly. Not firing. Just aiming. At me. I steadied my Colt. The world narrowed again. Same as before. Just two men. Two choices. Two endings. Everything else faded. The noise. The chaos. The fear. All gone. Just him. And me. And the understanding that this time, only one of us was walking away. I tightened my grip. And for the first time that night, I didn't hesitate. The world narrowed to a single point. Cole Riker. Nothing else mattered. Not the gunfire. Not the shouting. Not the chaos tearing through the town behind me. Just him. Just the man who had turned fear into power and thought no one would ever stand in his way. Smoke drifted between us, thin and gray, catching the flicker of lantern light. I could hear distant shots, men yelling, horses screaming, but it all felt far away now. This was where it ended. Cole raised his revolver just a fraction higher, his eyes locked onto mine. "You should have walked away, Dan," he said, his voice cutting clean through the noise. "Maybe," I replied. "But you didn't." "No," I said. "I didn't." His finger tightened slightly on the trigger. So did mine. For a second, maybe less, everything stopped. Time didn't move forward. It held, balanced on a knife's edge. Then, two shots rang out, almost at the same time. The recoil hit my hand, sharp and familiar. I didn't flinch, didn't look away. I kept my eyes on Cole as his body jerked slightly, his expression shifting. Not into fear, not into shock, but into something quieter. Something almost accepting. He staggered half a step back, his revolver slipping from his hand and hitting the dirt with a dull thud. I stayed where I was, gun still raised, because I'd seen men fake it before. But Cole didn't move again. The fight around us didn't stop right away. His men kept firing for a few seconds more, not realizing what had just happened. But then someone saw him fall. And everything changed. "Cole's down," one of them shouted. That was all it took. The line broke. Not all at once, but enough.
Some ran.
Some hesitated. A few dropped their weapons.
Fear.
The same thing Cole had used to control this town now turned against his own men. Sheriff Wallace and his people pushed forward, taking advantage of the shift. Shots became fewer, more scattered, less certain. Within moments, it was over. The night fell quiet again. But this time it was different. Not heavy, not suffocating, just still. I lowered my Colt slowly. My hand felt heavier now, not from the weight of the gun, from what it meant. I walked forward, step by step, until I stood over Cole. He lay on his back, staring up at the sky, breathing shallow.
Still alive. Barely.
His eyes shifted toward me as I approached. "You finally made your choice," he muttered, voice rough. I didn't respond right away, because he was right. This wasn't just a gunfight. This was a decision. "What kind of man you wanted to be," he added. I looked down at him. For years, I'd tried to walk away from this life, tried to be something different, something better. But the truth is, you don't escape who you are. You decide what to do with it. "You could have walked away too," I said. He let out a weak, breathless laugh. "No," he whispered. "Men like me don't get that luxury." His gaze drifted past me, toward the town, toward the people he'd ruled through fear. "Someone else will come," he said. "They always do." I knew that. He wasn't wrong. There's always another man willing to take power. Another man willing to hurt others to get it. "You're right," I said. His eyes flickered back to mine. "But they won't find this town the same," I continued. Something in his expression shifted again. Not quite regret, but close enough to recognize. Then his breathing slowed.
And stopped. Just like that.
I stood there for a moment longer, staring down at him. Then I turned away, because there was nothing else to say. Sheriff Wallace approached, wiping sweat and dust from his face. His shirt was torn, a small cut near his shoulder, but he was standing. "That's it?" he asked quietly. "That's it," I replied. He looked at Cole's body, then at me. "You could have ended this sooner," he said. "Maybe," I answered, "but it wouldn't have meant the same." Wallace nodded slowly. He understood, because this wasn't just about stopping a man. It was about what came after. The people of the town began to emerge from their homes, cautiously at first. Faces filled with uncertainty, then relief. Some looked at me. Some avoided my gaze. I didn't blame them. To them, I wasn't a hero. I was just another man with a gun. The difference was what I chose to do with it. "Kid, make it out?" Wallace asked. I glanced toward the western road. "Empty." "He better have," I said. Wallace followed my gaze.
"He will," he said.
"You gave him a chance." I nodded. That was all I could do. Give him a chance. The rest was up to him. The first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, soft and pale. The night was over. But something else had ended too. I holstered my Colt slowly, the motion feeling heavier than it should. "Where are you going now?" Wallace asked. I thought about that. About the road.
About the past.
About everything I'd been running from. Then I looked back at the town. At the people beginning to rebuild what had nearly been taken from them. "I'm not running anymore," I said. Wallace raised an eyebrow. "No."
"No."
He studied me for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Good," he said, "because this place could use someone like you." I let out a quiet breath. Maybe. Or maybe they needed something better. But for now, I'd stay. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. I stepped off the main street and walked toward the stable, the morning air cool against my face. The weight in my chest hadn't gone away. Maybe it never would. But it felt different now. Lighter. Like something had finally settled. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Didn't know if trouble would come back. Didn't know if I'd ever fully leave this life behind. But I knew one thing. That moment in the saloon, the one where everything could have gone one way or another, that was where it started. Not the fight. Not the violence. The choice. And, in the end, that's all a man really has.
Not the gun in his hand.
Not the reputation behind his name. Just the choices he makes when it matters most. I adjusted my hat slightly, stepping into the rising light. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't running from who I was. I was finally ready to live with it.